we can kind of share the simple structure that we ended up evolving to, and maybe a few different components to this. But this is kind of a good structure, maybe for anyone thinking of doing offsite or wanting to improve their offsites that their agencies might find helpful.
Yeah. So the first part we'll call like a look back on, you know, what went well, what didn't go well, what was surprising, um, about the past quarter or period of time. And then, really a time for reflection on like, what did we learn as leaders? What are like the big things that we just avoided talking about because we didn't have time or wasn't a priority?
Yeah, and for that, we really do ask people to come prepared.
Yeah.
So it's not something that that people are gonna be asked to improvise on the spot. But what we want are kind of well considered answers. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is I think we would spend at least a good 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how many people were there, of like kind of listening and kind of hearing how people answer some of these questions.
Yeah, and some of this could be a lens for the future discussions to come, but it's more just setting the table for here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we mentioned tension before, and like, part of the things that you can pick up from this exercise is kind of like, what's on people's minds? Like, really, how have their, what's their perspective like on, the past year, the past quarter, where, like, you could pick up on the language, and those are good signals to later, double click on and kind of, revisit together.
Yep. The next section we'll call learning together. So for us, that was reading books together as kind of the backbone of how we learned and had some shared language. And for us, it was required reading. It wasn't like a nice to have where certain members of the team could come prepared and others less so. And basically what we did, it's quarterly cadence for us. We, had a specific book, or if it was
Two books.
yeah, sometimes, yeah, two books, and really dedicate the time. Everyone made the time to read, take notes, and there's a bunch of prompts that we had as well. But I think the preparation is everything for that discussion.
Yeah, and I was really close to this because this is my favorite part of our offsites, and so the two, we pick books that a lot of times were about business, but sometimes they were more about kind of like personal development, and so we had a good variety of things. But what was most important about reading these books together was that you know and maybe like just I know this happens a lot where if I read something and I'm excited about it and I go to you, but you haven't read the book,
Yeah.
like you're just not gonna get the same kind of, like you might hear it be like, oh, that sounds interesting, but you're not gonna get excited about it as I am, and some of the language I might be using to describe it from that book might be a little foreign to you because you just haven't immersed yourself in it.
Yeah.
So what we found was, as a leadership team, when you read a book together and really spend time, and this is, you're talking hours over the course of a few weeks, maybe a couple months that you're reading the books, you become kind of ingrained in that language. And so when you have that moment to be like, hey, let's talk about the book, you have that shared language.
Yeah.
And so you take that dynamic and then you do that over the course of, for us, it was 7 years or so of like few books, 1 to 2 books every quarter. I think it ended up being over 40 books that we read together. These things have a magical way of like compounding, because you're like, oh, this concept was something that came up in this other book, and and you know what, this book has an interesting take on it, and you start to kind of have a much more sophisticated dialogue with what you've read, and then at the same time you had that base of shared language.
Yeah. I think a really important part of all of that was taking the time to reflect on, how that affected you personally. If there are any takeaways that affect your life or and even your business and how you approach your team. And all of that, even over time, you read another book, it's like, oh wow, that changed my perspective on this factor. Or you see the common themes right across multiple books, and really that kind of evolves how you interact as a leadership team. And it's almost like in some ways, that shared language is really important, because then like your team gets closer together. We almost have our way of talking. It's like our own secret language of sorts, but it's you're on the same page with what's going on.
Yeah, and just something practical takeaway was like what we would do actually is spend the first hour of the book discussion just sharing what we highlighted from the book, and just that exercise of like, hey, why did you highlight that? And each person kind of talking about what resonated with them. That just doing that in itself was is such a huge way to get value out of the book.
Yeah. And from that, we actually had an artifact where
Yeah,
all of the clips, you could say, all right, here's the theme, here's the quote, and then who, selected that quote. And then by the end, you have this huge map of like the book.
yeah,
And it's really synthesizing, like, yeah, from this long book, what are like the key 5 to 10 themes and what are the quotes that really, resonated with the team. So that it's really helpful to have that artifact to look back on.
yeah.
Yeah. So the last part is thinking about, where do you kind of build together as a leadership team? Really aligning as a leadership team. Like, what are we really going to focus on for the next quarter and next period of time? Like, what are we going to say no to and back burner? What are we really doubling down on? And then what are we going to change? What do we like? How do we operate differently, and how do we interact with our team? Like, what work are we going to take on and not take on? How are we going to grow and maybe make investments in hiring for a different role?
Yeah,
So,
and really, we tried so many different types of exercises to unlock this, this kind of segment or component of our offsites, because you do need kind of an activity or prompt that gets your kind of brainstorming or idea juices flowing. And so there's some ones sometimes we get really personal with it because I think from reading all those books, like one of the things takeaways was like, hey, a great business first starts with kind of personal mastery over yourself as a leader. And so, we have a lot of exercise around that. So one of the things I remember was we do this kind of like future self-writing where we kind of come with prepared, really like narratives on like, hey, it's a year from today. You're kind of reflecting on the year and just describe all the things that have transpired both in your life and in the business. And this is powerful stuff because it's a visioning exercise, but it makes it super personal. And I remember this was like at a time when like some of us were having kids for the first time, becoming parents, and other kind of challenges in the personal life, along with like all the things going on in the business life. And it was like really cool to hear some of the things that came out of this exercise.
Yeah. And I think, again, like to the lens of, preparation, it's everyone has to take the time, after, you go through the first part, you read the book, but this is something different where you're really thinking and stretching your mind into some imagination on like where things could be like unrelated to exactly where we are today. And sometimes we've gone even further, 5, 10 years later, not just 1 year.
Right.
It really makes you think about like where you're going to be, and then and then you can think about what are the steps to get there.